1 to the power 3, powered to empower, taking that which is broken and turning it into something beautiful. Real people facing real challenges, learning real lessons. That is the purpose that we gather every Wednesday so that we can bring encouragement, upliftment to all of us, but especially to those who find themselves in despair, in depression, without hope. And as always, I'm reaching out to you. Come and have a seat at our table as we listen to stories that motivate us and inspire us. We're on our 10th episode, and what an achievement. Today, I am joined by two beautiful guests, Brad and Kylie Jeffery. And they share with us their journey of their youngest daughter facing a traumatic event in her life. It's a nightmare for all of us as parents when we see our children go down a path that leads to death and destruction. We are covering confronting topics like suicide, self-harm, drug abuse, and when children go missing. So please be aware and take precaution. So we listened to their story of how they had to navigate their journey and what was the turning point in their lives, how they overcame and how they had turned this experience into something beautiful. Please join me as we listen to Brad and Kylie. What do we do when our children walk away? Coming up on this episode.
2019 was the beginning of hell for our family. In February, I think I had a car accident on the 1st. Brad was made redundant from his job on the 14th. A significant amount of other things happened all within a month. Our world just seemed to be falling apart. But most significant, and what we didn't know at the time was going to unravel to be a 3-year journey, was our daughter tragically losing her closest friend.
Welcome, friends, to another podcast of 1 to the power 3. We've got exciting guests that have joined us. We've got Brad and Kylie.
Hi.
You can say
Good
hi.
day.
Good day.
I wasn't sure whether you were saying hi. I thought you were going to do this big monologue.
So for Brad, I think according to Kylie, he's tenacious. According to himself, he's got a keen intuition. And according to me, he's just a big talker. And for Kylie, she represents meekness and strength and sunshine. And Brad and Kylie, maybe your journey will be able to bring some hope and some light into the lives around us. So we'll start off with you, Kylie. Can you just give us a few words of your background?
So I was raised mum and dad. First 10 years as a child, I, pretty normal, went to school, nothing too exciting there. As a teenager, had my own challenges, grew up in a home that while I was loved and taken care of, there was fear.
Mm-hmm.
It was a scary place to be sometimes. So as a teenager, I rebelled and, pulled back from that and found myself dating this beautiful man and a very young parent.
I was a high performer kid, great at sport, great academically. We moved around interstate, so fell into an identity of being the tough guy. And to make matters worse, I have a much older brother, and so I was introduced to drugs very early. So by the time I was early teens, I was a drug addict and had run away from home, living in a crack house. Actually, just a criminal. There was no other way to put it. Quite violent, heavily involved in the drug scene, and used a bit as a mule because I was young and could get away with stuff. And but everything was driven by substances.
Mm.
Up as to get going and down as to go to sleep. So found myself in psychosis when I was about 15. That set up some real deep spiritual encounters, which aligned with then meeting up with Kylie again and moving on and getting on with life and seeing the just the grace of God to actually set me free from all that sort of stuff, which set my life on a new trajectory.
You had a significant experience, spiritual experience at that age.
Yeah.
Can you just unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, so it was just this moment of desperation of just having a revelation that God was real.
Mm.
And in that thought process of and this is just the way the brain worked for me. It was I found myself in so much nothing that nothing meant there had to be something. And that was the actual thought. If there's nothing, there's something. God's real.
Mm.
And so I actually just that day packed my bag and just walked straight home, which was always a great thing for me as a child, because even in that space, being off the rails, I knew I could just go home and there wouldn't be any questions asked. So
you were on your own journey at that same period of time. Now, there was some stuff that you faced. You obviously said there was fear. Can you unpack that for us a bit?
Brad and I actually met when we were 9 years old. His family moved up in the Christmas school holidays before we started grade 5. So he was the new boy at school. That's when we met. My home life was very much one of emotional abuse. And there was, my parents had their own trauma, and that just came into their parenting, I guess. And at age 13, I had a significant trauma, and my parents were separated at the time, and then shortly after, they came back together, and I found myself just unable to stay in that environment. And I was sent by my mum to live with other family members. My parents were not Christian. We weren't raised in church or anything. God was never discussed in our household, but I'd always had this sense that I heard the voice of God. I didn't have language for it. I didn't know it was God until much later. But that was my anchoring and my safe place when things got scary. Just go and sit and, I'd hear the voice of God. And when I was sent away to live with family, they were actually Christians, my mum's brother and his wife, and they took me to church. And every Sunday I lived with them for, I think, nearly 18 months. And then, that's when Brad's referring to, I came back to our hometown because that was quite a long way away. I moved up to North Queensland, and when I came back down this way, reintroduced to Brad, and the rest is sort of history.
Well, it can't really be history because Brad gave me a different version.
oh, did I?
So if I remember correctly, she was knocking on your door.
Yes. So this is like very shortly after I had just returned home, and Kylie was knocking on the door, and that's what sort of got me up. And
so I was obviously still quite a traumatized young woman and working through my own pain and shame. But I was going to church and working on having a relationship with my parents again. And Brad did come along to church, and we were both baptized at 16 on the same day. There was another sort of significant trauma that took place in my home. I was taught to be a people pleaser. I was taught to, just put a smile on and keep going. Something snapped in me and I went, no, I'm not doing this. All of 16. All I knew to do was to go to Brad's house. I didn't really have a lot of friends at that stage. And his mum actually just, put her arm around me as soon as she knew I was running and afraid. She knew a little bit of my home life. She just said, you never have to leave. And so I lived with Brad's family.
Oh, that's comforting. You had a place to go to.
Yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you got to your mischievous self again.
Sort of. Well, because we didn't grow up in any sort of belief system or anything at home either. So while I was having this God's real moment, that wasn't instilled in my family, and so my mum's response was, no, you never have to leave, but shacked us up together. We had this, I don't know, just this certainty that we're each other's person. Like, it also led to our first child, Brady.
Wow, that's quite a journey in those years, up to 17, before you even hit 20.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You had a lot of significant
Big lifetime.
moments, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about you guys obviously getting married, starting your family, but now we're going to really get into the crux of this next stage in your life.
Yeah.
Do you think that prepared you for what was about to come?
Yeah, we knew life. We knew the world from a perspective that, was painful at times, but real. Yeah.
I would say just straight up, yes. Everything is set up for you. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And so they become the grounds and the testimonies and the things that you can remember for the next challenge.
You were into drugs. You were a drug addict. You've been in that world. You called yourself a crackhead.
Yep.
And you were right in it.
Yep.
Until you had a pivotal spiritual experience.
Yep.
And you didn't know anything about God. And that was the experience you had, and that turned your life 180. Yep. Kylie, you on the other hand, you grew up, you said, in fear, in an abusive home. You've learned that you had to take a stand for yourself. And part of that stand was actually running away from home into a safe place. So why I say that your experiences were preparing you for what was about to come, definitely, that you have two individuals coming together, and they were going to face probably the biggest challenge in your life as a mom and a dad.
Yeah.
So Kylie, can you talk to us about that experience?
2019 was the beginning of hell for our family. In February, I think I had a car accident on the 1st. Brad was made redundant from his job on the 14th. Then a significant amount of other things happened all within a month. Our world just seemed to be falling apart. But most significant, and what we didn't know at the time was going to unravel to be a 3-year journey, was our daughter tragically losing her closest friend to suicide. And she had some knowledge that this friend was struggling, I believe. And so the trauma that took place because of this, part of that was that she felt responsible. Mm-hmm. She felt like she was supposed to stop that from happening, and that she felt really, responsible that she wasn't there to stop it. She just turned 13, really. She was such a baby still.
Wow.
She was just a little, and she was such an innocent thing, and always a very passionate, sweet girl. So, she really took it to heart, and it just culminated in cascading events of torment and pain and our lives and hers falling apart.
So can you talk to us about your daughter's experience in February?
It was actually a blessing in disguise being made redundant. So some of the background that I do have in ministry context, so being involved in drug and alcohol rehabs and a lot of freedom and counselling based type of ministry. So it actually helped me identify things quite early and see things that could end up escalating quickly. Mm-hmm. So one of the first things that sort of noticed was as she was walking from her room to the bathroom one day, and she was just in bike shorts, and I could see cuts on her leg. And thankfully they were initial stages, you could tell, because they were very light. They weren't gushing, but you could see the marks. And so because I was able to identify that, then we just really started to try and engage in care and into the system and all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of preemptive trying to keep on top of not letting this event spiral out of control. And from there, I was actually surprised how quickly things can shift even in that space. Yeah. And unfortunately, we got really let down by youth mental health primarily in that space. So there was just little things that started to happen that their response was to, well, you just need to let her do it at home. Of which the challenge is being able to just love your children and hold boundaries, and then when your value system actually challenged by people of authority or perceived authority in the world, it's messy, and it makes you actually really assess, what's the approach here, how do we manage through this.
So take me back to that particular night that your daughter approached you.
She approached Kylie to say that her friend's gone, and she was hysterical. I wasn't actually in the room at the time, but I heard what was going on, and so my response was just to one, hear out what was going on there, and then two, because we have very different approaches to crisis. So it was just waiting until it settled a little bit in that conversation, and then I just went and sat with her in the room. And it was quite challenging sitting with her in the room because, as Kylie said, that there was this element that where my daughter felt responsible. But we had identified a few months earlier that when she was having sleepovers at her friend's house, she was coming home and having night terrors, and things just were a little off. And I sat with her and she let rip on me.
Yeah.
She let rip and tried to stab me.
Wow.
Because the night that her friend committed suicide, we had refused to let her sleep over. We'd had discussions around it that and inviting her to try and speak to us about what was happening there, because we identified that there was something traumatic was happening when she was there. Whether we were watching horror movies or whatever it is, but something was shifting for her every time she was there. And so we'd had discussions, and she agreed that it probably wasn't safe. So it wasn't a fight when we said no. No, we've had the discussion. I don't think it's a safe place.
And that's the reason you were protecting her.
Yeah. So, but in that we were inviting her to try and let us know what was happening so that we could help, but she wouldn't. She was protecting her friend and her friend's family. And so, but yeah, in that discussion, she tried to stab me with scissors because I didn't let her save her friend.
She was angry with herself.
Yeah.
That she wasn't there to save her friend. And then that anger turned towards you. You didn't allow me to be there for my friend, so it's your fault. Yeah. So she placed the guilt on you. Yeah. And this probably opened up the next door.
Yeah. Well, it did. That evening was quite a profound moment though. She went from trying to stab me to I just bear hugged her. I just bear hugged her, and I just kept telling her it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And she's trying to stab me. She's a wee thing. She's not real big. So I just wouldn't let her go. Just wouldn't let her go. And she was trying to get away until she then just settled into just getting a hug from Dad. And then so we journeyed for quite a few months, trying to, and she was active in trying to get help in that sort of space. Unfortunately, we probably just didn't realise the depth of the trauma. So what we did engage in was less helpful than what we had hoped. And so later on we found out that it was more a PTSD response than just how does she navigate death and that type of thing. And so having her in general counselling was actually getting her to relive the trauma. And so it was just compounding it. And so it very quickly turned into little things like we would still let her go and see friends, and we were just noticing, okay, she came home smelling like cigarettes at first. And then we found out there was some other substances going on as well. So there was probably a real pinnacle moment, because that was managed, that the anger towards me and the anger towards herself, we were able to sort of manage it. And then there was this introduction of substances that wasn't happening at home and stuff. And she was trying to stay at different friends' place that we weren't too sure about as well. But we didn't put a lot of pressure on it. But I just have discussions around and not put any judgment on the behavior, just like that leads to this getting worse, not getting better. I know it's helping you feel better now. But there was a moment where I watched her anger turn from me to God. And I knew that, I can't control this. I can't, well, not even control, because I wasn't trying to control it, but this is about to get a little unmanageable.
Yeah.
Because our daughter, she's the high achiever, highly disciplined. If she set her mind to something, you're not going to stop her. And you just knew, I could tell in the look in her eye that she had decided to try and just destroy her life.
Wow.
She'd made a conscious decision.
So Kylie, obviously you as a mom watching the self-destructive behavior take place, how were you processing this?
Not well. At first it was, I think I was actually quite oblivious to a lot of things, and thank goodness that, Brad having a background in ministry around addiction and trauma meant that he was able to recognize things, because I just wouldn't have. I didn't. And I was traveling a lot in my role, which meant I guess I had somewhat a bit of distance from it initially. I knew my daughter was hurting, and my thinking was just, it's okay, we'll get her help and she'll get help and she'll get better. It was very, I guess, an innocent sort of way of thinking, and probably a coping mechanism. It's okay, it'll get better. And generally things do, but obviously sometimes they get worse before they get better, which was exactly what happened in our case.
And so she goes on this massive rebellious path that just spirals all out of control. She gets into substances and just every parent's worst nightmare. How did you process it?
I probably processed it a lot differently to Kylie, processed it probably a lot different to most people. Because of the spiritual encounter that I'd had, I could approach it knowing that she would never be too far from salvation. She'd never be too far from getting past this. She'd never go, there is not a point where this can't turn around. And so there's nothing that happens to us. Everything happens for us, and adversity happens for us to be able to actually learn to overcome. Unfortunately, especially when you get into some hard drugs, amphetamines and ice, particularly is what she ended up addicted to. She would be missing and only be home when she's coming down. And if you do have any experience with drug and alcohol, it's the coming down bit that's the worst bit. And so we're just met with violence, man. Our house just got torn to shreds. We got beaten. Her sisters got beaten, and it just wasn't her. I had a discussion with a friend about it, and he was trying to encourage me. And he's like, "It's going to be okay, mate." And I was like, I just said to him, "Look, you don't know this girl.
Yeah.
If she sets her mind to this, this is dangerous.
That's warning signs.
This is hectic." The approach to it, I'm actually grateful for everything that I had gone through as a young person and as a young adult to be able to not be caught up in fear, not even caught up in fear of what people thought of me because my child was it helped, but it didn't make it hurt any less.
Yeah. I'd like to speak to our friends listening. A question that I want to propose to you is that as parents, what are we oblivious to within our kids and what they're going through? We hear from our friends Kylie and Brad that they've given their love and they've prepared a good environment for their children to grow. It's a nurturing environment. But it's in those environments that we can actually become a little bit oblivious to what they're actually going through. We see there's a great awareness of your daughter, what were her strengths, and what would actually mean a bit of trouble. That tenacity, if used productively, can produce something beautiful. But when it's used destructively, it can create something, but it leads down the path of death.
Yeah, it was a process of first just pain and freaking out, not knowing what to do, where to turn, especially since where we did turn was letting us down. For me, I just cried out to God. I didn't know what else to do, and I was at that moment feeling so angry and let down by the system and by God. And out of all four of our children, she was, in my mind, the least likely to ever end up in a situation like this, because she was she was just a compassionate, sweet, and very, obedient kid her whole life. So it was just so out of character. So I was feeling all sorts of things: grief, anger, loss. Yeah. When I cried out to God, I just had this moment where I was overcome by a sense that He loves her more than I ever could. And I was able supernaturally just to release her into His hands, knowing that His ways are higher than my ways.
Yeah.
I just picking up on one of the things around our daughter being the most unlikely for this to happen to. There's only one time she ever got in trouble for school. This sums up what our daughter, which now she's like, obviously we're here because we have a testimony of her restoration and all that sort of stuff. So the only time she got in trouble from school, her friend was sad and she asked what was going on, and it was the anniversary of her little brother's death of SIDS. And our daughter's response was, we need to fix that. So she grabbed her friend by the hand, walked across a major arterial outside of the school. So this is during school time, out of the school to McDonald's, grabbed a cup and started raising money for SIDS. We just can't wait to continue to share the testimonies of how good God is and how much she's impacting the world in her restored state. So, but that is our daughter that found herself into ice addiction. The behavior is not your child.
We need to be vigilant.
Yeah.
I would use that word. Our kids are going through some trauma, some stress.
Yeah.
In this case, the loss of a friend. But something at the root was brewing. Are we aware of what expectancy or expectation that we're placing on our children? Are we always wanting them to be top performers and wanting them to perform in that way? Are we not preparing them or empowering them to deal with life's challenges? What lessons you think that you guys were starting to pick up through this journey now?
I think for me it was about letting go, not in a way that you stop loving your child, not in a way that you stop hoping for your child, but in a way that you let go of the uncontrollables, let go of even the social conditioning that we have to, say what's a normal pathway for a child, and this is age appropriate and this isn't, and this is what your child's life should look like. They go to primary school, they go to high school, they go to college, they graduate, they get the corporate job.
It's a system.
It's just a system, and sometimes outside the system, outside of life looking like that, there's really beautiful things that you will miss if you hold too tightly to that. So letting go in the things that are not as important, and just holding tightly to your love for your child and who they are at their best self.
You mentioned that there's a treasure within.
There's a treasure.
So we've got to look and hold on to that. Yeah. Now it's going to get really bad after this now, because she walks away from home. She walks away from a relationship with the Lord, right? And she goes down a deep, dark path. Talk to us about that, Brad.
I then took a contract, and it just meant that I was on the road. I was in a different city just about every day, and it just meant I wasn't available to it. And so I was at a quite a large meeting, lots of executives, and I was in Adelaide. I was in the meeting, and my phone was going off quite a bit. I called back, and on the other end of the phone, Kylie was quite beside herself because she'd just slit her wrist in front of everyone in the kitchen.
So this was your daughter's
This
sister?
is my daughter. Had and it's just, we know where self-harm type of stuff comes from, just that pain release or the punishment where they are in their grief cycle in that stage. So, I couldn't do a thing. It was just impossible. There was just nothing that could be done. And so it had gotten to that state before she was actually missing. So during that, in saying that, she would be missing for short amounts of time because she'd be on a binge somewhere. I'd be able to find her in quite supernatural ways.
Yeah, so maybe talk to us
Okay,
a little bit about that.
While I was home and she'd sort of just disappear here and there, I would just be in prayer and just keeping myself in peace, to be honest. Like it's most of what prayer was for me, just keeping myself centered. And I would just get like a whisper, an inspiration to open my map, and I'd just get shown a house next to a park, or a house in this street, or she's at that park, or she's at this beach, or and I'd just go and grab her. And often it was met with violence. Like it was like I was grabbing her, and because she's little, grabbing her and throwing her in the back of the car and just bringing her home. But one of the funniest ones is I just had this inspiration, and it was just a small whisper that said, "Just get in the car." So I got in the car, and I got directions: turn left, turn right, go up this street at that spot, turn right, and I just kept following that intuition and that whisper. And then I was in the middle of Surfer's Paradise, like it was almost audible. Turn left now. And I turned left, and out from an alley, she just popped out right at the lights that I was at. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and so stuff like that was happening all the time when I was around. And now I've had a phone call that she's tried to take her life violently, which is unusual for a lady too, when you actually go through some of the psychology of that. A violent act like that is very unusual. I was trying to manage a merger of a large merger project. If I don't stay well, nothing ends well. Mm-hmm. And so it was just I can't keep doing this.
So fatigue set in.
Fatigue started to set in, and we didn't cover it much in my break, but I have had a breakdown before. So I knew that we're getting towards a line here.
Your breaking point.
I was getting close to my breaking point, but it was weird because we're just so filled with peace over the whole thing. Can't even describe it. But it was in that moment I got back from Adelaide and said, "Babe, I can't keep going."
So you had to draw the line and set some boundaries in place now.
Yeah. So we had boundaries in addictive behavior and stuff. We had managed like quite well. Like,
but for yourself,
but for me, I was in a place that I was healthy enough, and my boundaries were healthy enough that I knew that running that is not going to be sustainable.
So Kylie, during this time, you obviously sensed there was a shift taking place.
Yeah. So at that same time when Brad was, feeling that release to take a step back and essentially put our daughter in God's hands. And once I knew that Brad was, stepping into, I guess, peace is what I know it to be now. But I immediately went into, okay, I've got to carry this. I think that shift initially, for a moment, it was terrifying. I don't know how to deal with those situations, and it shifted very quickly because I just went into prayer. I don't know what to do. And, as I shared before, it was somewhat like a tantrum. I was, give me my daughter back. Show me. I knew that Brad had been having these spiritual encounters and being able to be shown on a map or, shown intuitively where our daughter was. And I expected the same. And when I cried out, give me my daughter back, I felt God just say, whose daughter? And it was like I felt this rush of love.
Sure.
And I knew that he had her.
So you had to surrender that as
I
well.
surrendered. And it was a choice. I had a moment where I could fight that. But
Yeah.
the surrender actually, I believe, is what contributed to the outcome.
Wow. But that must be the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
So
Right.
hard.
So to our friends, when we're going through situations like this, are you taking time out for caring for yourself? In that moment, in order for you to take that step of surrender, you also were challenged by God.
When I refer to prayer, I'm encompassing a lot of things: mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, all these things that are quite sound principle and quite biblical principle. That it's like, so when we say prayer, we're practicing peace, we're practicing meditation, gratitude. Because Scripture says we enter His gates through thanksgiving. So gratitude actually can place you into a heavenly realm, into a heavenly space. And so I had all the disciplines in there for my mental health as well, because I'd learnt those skills. But in that surrender moment where I was just in that meditative prayer space, and I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I felt like I heard, "Don't you think I love her more than you ever could?" And it was in that, and this is the thing that when people try and share their faith, and I can understand why some people can't quite grasp it, but it is so profound that when you enter this space and you're in this relationship, the words that you hear, they're not just words. They come with the fullness of life to it.
It's life.
As soon as I heard, "Don't you think I love her more than you?"
Yeah.
It washed me with love and peace. It permitted me to let go.
It gave you the grace.
It gave me a grace to just let go.
Yeah.
Probably easier for me because, like I said, in the background that I had, I know that no one is too far. No one is too far. Because if anyone was too far, I was pretty close.
Yeah.
It was an interaction that started to happen. I can't even remember what the words were, but we very quickly identified also, well, we just went at each other.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the conversations, but you could tell there was like blame. But as soon as we identified it, we went, this is not going to work if we're enemies. This doesn't.
Yeah.
Nothing gets better.
Yeah.
And so in addition to our self-care that we had sort of already been sitting in, but been permitted and drawn deeper into that, we realize we need to make sure that we've got support to keep us united.
Yeah. You mentioned how important is that for parents when they're going through situations like this to actually lay down their arms and actually come and unite together.
I am such a big believer that if you blame, you get nowhere. Blame doesn't help anyone anytime. It is about taking responsibility and recognizing, and if blame rises up, you need to actually reflect on what's going on in me. Generally, it's a kind of projection, and we just need to unpack our own hurt and trauma that we all have and get the support that we need, because we truly are the foundation of our children's lives when they're young, and our marriage is the foundation of children's lives. And so being a united front, the last thing a child hurting would need is and I knew the guilt that our daughter was walking in. If our marriage had fallen apart, I knew she would blame herself. We were blessed enough to have support networks that we were able to reach out to and immediately, first of all, recognize that the fight could have come to our home front and torn us apart.
Yeah.
And then the support, we went to marriage counselling and we were honest with some close friends around us of what was happening.
And that's important, right? When you're in a situation like this, it's important for you to seek professional help. Yep. You can't do the journey on your own, right? Even though you have to be in the forefront, you always seen yourself as that protector of your family, and you have to be in the forefront. Yeah. But you had to take a step back Friends, this was such a heart-wrenching story that we've heard from Brad and Kylie. A young lady, 13 years old, dealing with an event in her life that really pulled her into a dark spiral. What does it take? It takes honesty. It takes a boldness to stand together. It takes coming together in prayer, surrendering things that are out of your control, having a good network of people around you to help you. Know who you can trust. But also, it's knowing what you have built in to your children, knowing your children, the values, the beliefs, and their character, and trusting that the lessons that you have taught them will bring them through their challenges. What stood out for you? What are the things in your children's lives that you are oblivious to? Maybe this is an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with your child or with your children. Find out a little bit more about them. What's their interests? What are their challenges? As parents, we cannot leave it to their teachers. We cannot leave it to their friends. We have to take that responsibility. So as a parent, I know it's not easy, but it is our duty. We need to take care of our children more than just giving them what they need. So in the next part 2 of this episode, we get to listen to Brad and Kylie at the actions that they had to take. The tough love, standing your ground, and not allowing the behavior patterns or bad behavior patterns to determine the outcome. But through their tenacity and through their unity, pull their daughter back on track. Please join us next week. Coming up on next week's episode.
When people go missing, because it wasn't like in the past, like she's just up to no good. She was missing. None of her friends knew where she were. None of the people, I've got phone lists of like everything. And so, but no one knew where she was.